It then discusses various options that are available to the government in relation to this. The first option is do nothing. The second one is to ensure an orderly runoff of Irish Nationwide Building Society. Now, this is in September 2008. And in that, they say one of the options there is to provide covert funding for Irish Nationwide. Now, this purports to be a document sent from Irish Nationwide to the government. What do you make of that? You're in government. Do you think it's right that covert funding should be going from one bank to another under the aegis of government?
As you say, that's a document that came from Irish Nationwide to the Irish government, and it wasn't an option that was taken up on. But I do have very strong concerns about the activities of Irish Nationwide. I'm looking forward with interest to the workings of the Commission on Inquiry on banking as regards to how that, as a mutual building society, was involved in so much reckless lending, and how much of that lending was outside the state. I think there are severe questions to be asked about Nationwide, but that doesn't change the fact that a bank guarantee scheme had to be put in place in September 2008 in order to assuage international confidence and to stop a capital run on funds. That's the reason the decision was made then.
I have to put it to you, Dan Boyle, the banks were running rings around the department and the government at this stage. They were going in there and saying, Irish Nationwide is in desperate trouble, it has to be bailed out. Maybe Anglo could save it, and if Anglo was going to save it, Anglo would have to be underwritten by the state. So it's in bottomless pit that they're being sucked into.
I think there are two issues at hand here. One is about whether the bank guarantee scheme was the best option. I still believe it's the best option. The second was whether the decisions that the guarantee decision was based on was given on the right information, correct information, honest information, and there are very severe questions about that. And obviously there are some in institutions, individuals and institutions collectively, who effectively lied to the Irish government and lied to the Irish state, and those are the issues that we have to get to the bottom of.
Do you think you will get to the bottom of them?
I'm confident we will. I'm confident that the appointment of Mr. Nyberg, the fact it has to be reporting within 6 months, the experience we've had with the two reports from Patrick Honohan and Mr. Riegling and Watson are showing that we are pointing in a particular direction, and we're peeling off the layers of this onion, and there's no hiding place for those who have brought us to where we are.
Frank Fahey, we're still living with the consequences. I've just been handed a statement that's been issued in the last few minutes by the NTMA. That's the agency that borrows money on behalf of the people of Ireland. It has told the international markets that the country's deficit is likely to rise as a result of bailing out the banks. Chief Executive of NTMA, John Corrigan, said, we flagged the possibility of the deficit will rise as a consequence of our investment in the banks and so forth. He says that this could bring Ireland's deficit to almost 20%, the highest in the developed world. That's astonishing, isn't it?
It is. It will rise this year as a result of that, but it will come back down next year to 11.5%. And again, you know, the fact of the matter is that there was no other option but to bring in the guarantee. And, you know, it's not correct for Dan to say that we're paying more as a result of the guarantee. In actual fact, when the Anglo element of the guarantee comes through, I believe that the guarantee will not have cost the taxpayer any money. And I questioned Patrick Honohan on this. And because there are obviously negotiations between Anglo and their subordinated debt holders still to come, you know, they weren't forthcoming about it. But it's quite clear to me, certainly, that the guarantee and the wide nature of the guarantee will in time be proved to be correct. But I want to challenge Michael Noonan on one issue. He stated there that the Governor of the Secretary General of the Department of Finance, David Doyle, advised the government they should let Anglo fail. Would he confirm that that's what he said? Because that simply is not true, and I haven't even seen the documents.
Sorry, Michael Noonan, I think we have the document here at some stage, but can you clarify what you're saying first?
I'm simply saying that the government who came to the Dáil and said that they needed the support of the Dáil to deal with a liquidity crisis in the banks knew for almost a week that there was a major solvency issue. And this had been pointed out to them in respect of Anglo-Irish Bank and Irish Nationwide by the Secretary General of the Department of Finance.
Yeah, okay.
At a meeting where the Taoiseach, the Finance Minister, the Attorney General, all the regulators and various other outside people were present.
Yeah,
that's what
Frank Fahey, there is a minute. Frank, sorry, can I just put it to you? There's an actual document here dated 25th of the 9th, 2008, and the first paragraph says PricewaterhouseCoopers gave a detailed report on the Anglo-Irish loan book, and then they go into details about development land and so forth, how much billions, 13 billion worth of land and all this kind of stuff, how much was zoned, how much had planning permission. So this was the subject of the meeting. Then it says D. Doyle, he's a senior guy in the Department of Finance, said the government would need a good idea of the loss exposure within Anglo and Irish Nationwide. So what Michael Noonan is saying is that they weren't just looking at, these guys need cash for the weekend or for 6 days or 20 days or whatever. They're looking at solvency here.
Exactly.
It says INBS would need 2 billion and Anglo would be 8.5.
Exactly, and that's the reason why the guarantee was given, number one, and number two, the reason why it was decided that Anglo-Irish Bank was of significant importance, and that if the bank was allowed to fail at that stage, it would have a knock-on effect on the rest of the Irish banking system. And the government did exactly the right thing.
So you're saying, sorry, Frank, are you saying that the government...
It was not correct for Michael Noonan to say that David Doyle advised, as he said earlier, that Anglo should be... He did not give any such advice. He stated the situation, and the government took the advice and took the action that was necessary. And the fact of the matter remains, Damien, and it has been proven by Reglan and Watson and by Professor Honan, that had the government not taken the actions they took on that particular night, then this economy would be in free fall. We would be a lot worse off than Greece. And I think the documents today prove, in fact, that the government did the right thing.
Sorry, just before we go back, before we go back to Michael Noonan, what you're saying, Frank Fahey, is that the government knowingly bailed out insolvent banks at that point.
No, I'm not saying they bailed out anybody. The government gave a guarantee which covered the liabilities of the banks, and if they hadn't given it, we'd have seen a number of banks fail in this country. To quote Professor Conahan in his report, a number of banks would fail in this country within days. That's exactly the quotation.
Let's go back to Michael Noonan now. Michael.
Yeah, what I said, Damien, as you know quite well, is that Merrill Lynch advised that Anglo didn't need to be rescued and it should be turned into a bad bank. David Doyle provided information to the meeting that Anglo was becoming insolvent. Now, my problem with it is that on the night of the debate on the guarantee, I specifically raised this with Brian Linehan. Brian Linehan assured me that there wasn't a solvency issue, there was a liquidity issue. And Fine Gael then took it on trust. We knew, as Dan Boyle correctly said, that some guarantee had to be provided at that point. But what we're objecting to is the misinformation on which we acted and the fact that the government knew there was a solvency problem and didn't give that information to the Dáil.
OK, Michael Noonan, finance spokesperson for Fine Gael, thanks for joining us here today on the Lunchtime Show on Newstalk 106. Thanks to Frank Fahey, who's Fianna Fáil deputy for Galway West, and to Dan Boyle, who's a senator from Cork South West, or Cork South Central, and Green Party spokesperson on finance. Now, lots of breaking news this lunchtime. Bank of Ireland has confirmed that they're to lay off 750 staff. They hope to achieve this by voluntary redundancy, and they are saying that this flows from their reconstruction programme, which has got the approval of Europe. Another news release coming into us just in the last few minutes. It says 2 big banks, Bank of Ireland and AIB, have passed the domestic stress tests, which are the most severe stress tests currently being carried out by the European Union. And the National Treasury Management Agency, which borrows on behalf of the people of Ireland, has said that it has told international lenders that the country's deficit will hit 20%, the highest in the developed world, when the cost of the bailout is put into the national accounts this year. That's for 2010. We'll have the highest borrowing requirement in the world. Loads and loads of messages coming in. It says, listener here says, Dan Boyle, come on, further evidence. If Fianna Fáil is Fat Cat Party, that's from Tom Hobbs in Dublin 22. He says, what are the Greens doing hanging around with them? And a listener says, Big Dan sounds like a Fianna Fáil PR mouthpiece. I am a Green Party supporter since before there was a viable Green Party, and I will never vote for them again in any capacity. How can these two people defend all of this? Lots more besides. The text line for your messages is 53106. We'll bring you some messages later in the programme.